Welcome back, everybody, to the JSS Podcast. I'm Byron Enriquez, your host. Today's episode is a little bit. It's very near and dear to my heart. It's something that it's just one of the things that I'm very, very passionate about. One of the things that is what drives me and my passions and why I do what I do. One of the reasons why I focus on the things that I do. A lot of it has to do with my culture and the way I was raised and the way I grew up. Today we're talking about a money mindset. I don't really know exactly another term for it. It's just a mindset, especially in the Latino community or immigrant community coming over, and it's just the mindset of, some people call it scarcity, some people call it survival. And just how we approach money and how we've been taught. There's a lot of things that echo in my mind constantly, different lessons that I was taught by my parents, my dad, and I've always struggled with them, and I've always felt it as a clash to how I view things and how I view money and how I view growth and building wealth and entrepreneurship, and it's always caused an internal struggle for me, trying to learn the lessons that my parents have taught me, and then also educate myself and learn how to do things differently. And it creates an internal conflict, because not that you want to turn your back on those thoughts or those lessons, or not that you want to diminish them, but you don't always necessarily agree. So it, just did a little soul searching, a little introspection, and seeing that, and to me, I think it helps really understand where those lessons came from, and where that mindset came from. Personally, my parents immigrated to this country about 50 years ago from Central America. As I know, many of the people's parents did as well. We're first generation here. Well, when our parents came over, they really came in with a survival mindset. For them, earning dollars, making money was survival. They came in with the mindset of, you work hard, you saved every penny you had, you didn't take unnecessary risks, you protected everything you earned. Stashed it away in a mattress, or you stashed it away at the bank, or you really saved as much as you could, because you didn't know what tomorrow would bring. One of the things my dad always would tell me is be careful. You always want to plan for your future. You always want to, I forgot how he would say it specifically, and it was in Spanish, but it was like, you always want to be prepared for that place where they're going to scare you. Meaning there's always something negative out there, some pitfall or something that's out there that can shake you, or rattle you, and you always need to be prepared financially for those times, right? And our parents, grandparents, whoever it was, they came from countries where sometimes the financial systems weren't up to par. Banks, governments, everything was just rocky, or when they were there, at least. Something they couldn't trust. So they come in with those preconceived notions that they can't trust the financial systems, or they can't trust investments, or they can't trust all these things that sometimes they don't understand, but they also don't trust, and they have a genuine distrust for those things, right? So I think a lot of us were brought up and taught those lessons. They brought prevention. They brought not a whole lot of risk taking. They brought scarcity. They brought survival mentalities. But what happens is yes, they did that. Us as first generation and next generation need to improve on that, right? We don't need to take those lessons for granted. We don't need to take the sacrifices that they did for granted, because they came in, they worked their butts off, worked 2 jobs, worked hard, did hard labor, worked jobs that sometimes they were overqualified to do, but that's what they knew they had to do to be able to provide for us, to give those opportunities for us. But and then I see so many of the next generation falling in that same pitfall, and not taking those sacrifices and turning them into opportunities, right? We need to respect what our parents and our grandparents did for us. We need to respect where it came from. We need to respect that that's what they knew. But yet, I think the biggest form of respect that we can give to that is to build upon that, right? And I think, there's a lot of things that we weren't taught, possibly because they didn't know about it, right? So that's where my passion for this podcast, but for a lot of the things that I do, comes from educating people, comes from an approach of giving people more tools, things that we didn't have exposed to us. A lot of people who, their families have been in this country for, 100, 200 years, 250 years, whatever it is, they come from a place where, I know the argument always comes up saying, well, you have the same opportunities that we do. And that may be, at this point, we may have similar opportunities, but we also don't have those 200 years, 100 years, 200, whatever it is, of generations, growing their wealth. They're not approaching things with that survival mindset. They're not approaching things with that scarcity mindset. They're not approaching things where we may not be here tomorrow. Their families, their ancestors, have purchased land, have been able to leave something. They've been in these, areas for a very long time, right? And sometimes, again, speaking to my culture and my upbringing and the people in similar circumstances, we were never taught about investing. We were never taught about building credit. We were never taught about, owning income-producing assets. We weren't taught about retirement planning. We weren't taught about debt and using leverage responsibly. We weren't taught about tax strategies, estate planning, generational wealth. We weren't taught those things. Quite the opposite sometimes. We were told, I've seen a ton of clients in my career who make great money and they're looking to buy a property, but they've never taken on debt. They've never financed the car. They come from a mentality, a mindset of, if I can't afford it cash, then I'm not going to buy it. Which I respect that mindset, not getting yourself over leveraged and not taking on, not living above your means, which is a great mentality. But yet the system is designed that if you don't use credit or you have never used credit, then you're falling behind, and you need to have positive credit history to be able to grow that, and a lot of times people for not having that are penalized, right? Which is a weird mentality, weird thing in our credit system, but just the way it is, and a lot of us we're never taught that. We're told not to get into debt. We're told not to finance things because, again, you don't want to over leverage yourself, and then that all those, lessons and all those thoughts are always come into your head, and you're being told, no, protect yourself, invest wisely, don't invest, don't take risks, put your money away, and then you get to an age where it's just like, you feel safe, or like my parents or grandparents or different family members, that I know of, or different people that I talk to, they have their little nest egg, and yes, they're protected, and they know they're never going to be out on the street, and they feel safe because they have X amount of dollars. But the problems are, what they don't realize is that same little amount of dollars that they have, which they feel maybe when they started putting together their savings 30 years ago would have been enough, but now with the cost of goods, inflation, things continue to rise, but their dollars have not accumulated the same. They're stuck at a point where now that money isn't enough, right? And those are the things that we're not taught. Savings alone is not building wealth. Just stashing your money isn't gonna change things. Yes, and it may may make you feel safe because that balance doesn't move. You're not dependent on the stock market. You're not dependent on investments. You're not dependent on different things that where you're seeing your dollars, your assets go up and down, which is scary to a lot of people. So they like to see, hey, I have 50,000, I have 100, whatever that dollar amount, that amount is, it doesn't change. And they were like, I know I'm good. My money's not going away. And yes, there's something to be said for that. But as everything else, housing, food, insurance, education, healthcare, everything else has got more expensive. So that same amount is not it's not comparable, right? And that's not something that people take into consideration, right? I mean, yes, you need to have cash for emergencies, insurance. You do need to have all the things that protect you, but we also need to find a way to change some of that mindset and be able to learn about different strategies to create wealth, to create ownership, to create entrepreneurship, to help take those next steps. There's a lot of verbiage that kind of comes into your mind. One of the things that always stuck out to me, and I'll say it in Spanish because it's the way it was taught to me. It was always, no somos ricos, we're not rich. Those things are for rich people. Eso es para los ricos. We were told many things. That's for rich people. That's for rich people. And you're raised with this mentality thinking it's not for me. I can't have that nice house. I can't have the house with the pool. I can't have the brand new car because that's for rich people. That's for people with money. Where when if we work hard and do all the things needed, we 100% can do that. That's for us. Those opportunities are for us. I was reading an article a couple days ago that the Latino community here in the U.S. is the 4th largest economy in the world. Now think about that for a second, right? The amount of resources, spending power, assets, availability to cash that we have is the 4th greatest in the world. But yet we have this scarcity mentality where we stash everything. We're not taking risks. We're not, and I get it. I'm not talking about gambling in a way. I'm not talking about taking these crazy risks. But we do need to learn that we're not just consumers. We need to move away from the fact that, yes, we have resources to be able to pay for our things, cash, and we're consumers, but we also need to take that next step and become owners. We need to take that next step and not just be employees. We need to take that next step and learn that we can be entrepreneurs. We can own businesses. We can be leaders. We can be business owners. We can be investors. We can be lenders. We can be all the things that move us away from that survival mentality that we were told we need to live by. And again, it's one of the things that I struggle with most, and it carries some guilt, and it carries a lot of things that is tough because you want to honor your parents and you want to honor the things that they've taught you and follow the lessons that they taught you, because I'm smart enough to know that I need to listen to people that have been around longer, have been through different situations that I haven't, right? Learn from their experiences. But again, we can't turn our back on the fact that we can't stay stuck in that mindset. We can't stay stuck in that mentality. We need to, grow from it. We need to build entrepreneurship. The Latino community is, in my opinion, it's always been very, very entrepreneur focused. Right? We have landscapers who say, hey, I'm going to go start my own crew. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Pool men. We have starting cleaning companies. We have real estate agents who started their own offices, started their own brokerages. We have contractors. We have, the lady on the street who sold tortillas, sold, candy, sold food out of their kitchens. But then we're a lot of us get stuck in that saying that's it. That's how we can do. But what if that lady who was making, food in their kitchen turned that into a restaurant? What if the landscaper who had his own crew and didn't want to work for somebody but just had his own route? What if he went out and started a corporation and hired 10 crews, right? There's a difference between creating a job for yourself and owning a business. And I think that's that education piece that I think a lot of people aren't taught, and a lot of people aren't shown that we can. That saying, si se puede, we can. We have the resources, we have the mentality, we have the education, we have the knowledge, we have the smarts to take that next step. And that's one of the things that I love to kind of try to teach people about, right? It's teach our children that we have that knowledge, we have the expertise to take those next steps. I think it's super important to have these conversations with your kids from a very young age. Now, my generation, and I try to sit down with them, talk to them about, how business works, how a company works, how corporate structure works, how trusts, estate planning, how retirement works, how credit works, teach them how investments are evaluated, what we look at, and what makes a deal good? Why makes, owning real estate, why is that a good thing? What other options are there to investing? Education is powerful. And I think being able to give our kids, the ability to stand on our shoulders, to take those next steps, right? To keep growing based off of the sacrifices that our parents and grandparents have left for us. And how do we stand on their shoulders to keep growing, right? It's not, one of the things too with Hispanic and Latino families is, there's people feel that there's one person in the family that's going to drive the train and take us to that next level. But I think it's a combination of everything, right? It's a combination of all of us focused together and building, empowering each other, helping, teaching, giving ourselves tools, resources, supporting. How many of us know a business owner, and the first thing we do is, hey, can I get a discount? Or can I get something for free? Right? If we're supposed to be supporting each other's businesses, but we wouldn't go to Starbucks and ask for a free drink, right? Why is it that a friend of mine opens a coffee shop? Why am I going to go ask for a discount and ask for a free drink? Right? It defeats the purpose. We're there to support each other's business. I couldn't tell you guys how many times, in my career, I've had people who come to me for advice, but yet won't use me to actually close their deal. Hey, I'm going to this bank or this loan officer or this mortgage company or this real estate agent, but can you help me review my terms and let me know if this is something that's good for me? And then you think, okay, well, so you rather give your money to somebody else as opposed to a friend or a family member who's trying to build something, right? We do that to each other so much, right? And that's a conversation that people don't like to have. It's like, oh, they feel that I can't bring you up because then that puts me, it says then I'm not at the same place as you. I don't know what it is. And it really is frustrating to see that, but these conversations need to be had. There's a conversations with your kids that I remember not having with my parents, and not to say anything negative about them, because I think we had a lot of great conversations. But the conversations about money that were never had, right? You don't talk about household budgets. You don't get taught how to create a budget. You don't get taught about credit and borrowing or how to balance a checkbook, interest rates, taxes. This is how things work. You're not taught those things. And those are conversations that need to be had now with your kids, because that's how you become stronger. That's how you create independence. That's how you build wealth. That's how you empower them. You give them knowledge. And I think it's so important to have these conversations, to have these ideas, and not put somebody down, not shut somebody down when they have an idea for a business or they have an idea for an investment opportunity. I've been told so many times in my career of being self-employed, being an entrepreneur, I've been told so many times, why don't you go get a real job, where your next paycheck is coming from. Right. And I get it, right? The stability of having that paycheck is nice. I haven't had that in 20 years. We go out and what is it? You eat what you kill, right? You go out and you hunt, but that creates a hunger to go out and achieve more. And I think we take that away from people a lot of times because we feel that, oh, no, again, like I said, oh, no, you can't go out and start an investment fund. You can't go start a real estate company. You can't go start a mortgage company. That's for rich people. It's not for us. And that's the biggest message I'm trying to get across today to my people, to my generation, that we can and we need to. Right? We have to honor the sacrifices that our parents, our grandparents made coming over to this country, immigrating here. First kids going to college, first kids getting good educations, first kids opening businesses, starting businesses. We need to honor those sacrifices that they made, by moving forward, and not letting those loyalties to where we came from dictate our future. Right? We need to change that and become aggressive and be able to learn more, learn that we can, learn the opportunities that exist out there and push it, because we can't complain that we're never getting anywhere if these opportunities are not just going to fall in our lap. We need to go out and create them. Again, those are the things that I think are important. But the conversations, again, need to be had, right, about shifting that money mindset that I'm talking about. So some practical steps that I think you can teach and should always be on the forefront of, and conversations that you should be having, is I'm going to go through a couple steps that I think are practical, that I think are important, benchmarks or important foundation to get started, right? Understanding where your money goes, right? Creating a budget, knowing where your money gets spent every month. I think it's important. Again, people aren't taught that, right? Creating a budget. And I know it's the B word that nobody likes, especially my wife doesn't like to talk about. But it's knowing where your money is spent. You need to have emergency reserves, 100%, right? Always need to have emergency reserves, because you never know, economy, all the things that happen, eliminate destructive debt, which we call, right? Debt that's high interest, debt that's, predatory almost, debt that's not producing, it's not for a smart asset, right? And then once you set that foundation of that, and you start seeing, okay, well, I have X amount of dollars left over, you still need to start investing consistently, right? Figure out where you want to invest and start investing consistently. You need to increase your earning ability. Figure out what are the next steps. More education. Can I get a raise? Can I get a side job? What is it that you need to do? Start earning to increase your earning ability. Big thing is explore ownership, right? Find out, can I start a business? Can I do this? Can I, own part of this debt fund, part of this real estate? Doesn't always again be that you own a business, but there's different aspects of ownership that you can get into, or explore those options. Create a trusted professional circle. Surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. Surround yourself with people that you can ask questions to. Surround yourself with people who have a positive money mindset, that can teach you things. People who encourage growth. People that celebrate your successes. People that are empowering you and giving you knowledge to take those next steps and pushing you forward, right? Surround yourself with those right people. And then create a plan with your family. Talk to your kids. Hey, look, this is as a family, what we're trying to do. This is our goals. We're trying to own this. And sometimes it may be, I know that I can only take it so far, but we're handing the reins over to the next generation to take these next steps as you continue to build. They talk about generational wealth. It's not about one person doing that. It's about generations. It's taking that and moving it forward. Those are conversations that I try to have with my 3 kids about that. It's, hey, look, we're building something. JSS is an ecosystem that does A, B, C, and D. But what are those next steps? I mean, I'm limited in my capacity of knowledge and what I know and how I can do things. But there is so much more that can be done. My goal is to empower them and to give them knowledge and to set the foundation for something that they can take to that next level. And it may not be with JSS, right? But at least hopefully we're giving them that knowledge and those opportunities to be able to continue forward, right? And I think that's that's the biggest thing is moving away from that survival mindset, and take this into growth. Stop, fight or flight. It's taking growth, taking the next steps that are needed, right? It's, one of the things that I think I feel strongly in, again, our parents sacrificed, they saved, and they created opportunities. But now we must take these opportunities and take those next steps. Honor them by taking the next steps. Keep their discipline, keep their work ethic, keep the loyalty, keep their resilience, keep all the things that made us who we are, and don't forget where we came from. But now we take that, stand on those shoulders, and take those next steps, remembering that we're not beginning from zero anymore, right? As our parents did. They started from nothing. Now let's stand on their shoulders and take those next steps. Don't let fear stand in the way. Don't that scarcity or that survival mindset stand in our way. Support each other, have each other's backs, empower, learn, educate, help our fellow people, help our brothers, help people in our communities grow together, right? Our parents survived so we can have these opportunities. Let's not let them down. So that's it. That's all I got for you guys today. I really hope that this is something that you can feel as much as you can feel my passion for. Something that opens up dialogue in your families, opens up dialogue about opportunities that you want to have more education. Reach out to us. We'd love to share what we can. I'd love to have a conversation with you guys. DM us, ask questions. We'd love to be able to provide some resources. So thank you guys, and see you guys next week.